I grew up in the USSR, and there the propaganda you got was alternate reality propaganda. My school told me to love Lenin more than my parents. This was falsehood peddled at you, designed to persuade you of a coherent alternate picture of reality. This is very different to Russian propaganda. Russian propaganda is not alternate reality propaganda. Russian propaganda is post-truth propaganda. It's designed to persuade you not into an opinion, but into inaction, into not doing politics. Russian propaganda asks you to not have political opinions, but it wants you to have two minimal opinions about political opinions. First, participating in politics is a bad idea. Only a fool does that. Private freedom is good, but public freedom is for idiots. This is an extreme project of depoliticization. The second opinion is a back-of-the-napkin theory of truth, which says who knows what, if anything, is true, which is of course a self-refuting position. To understand this more deeply, let's look at what I take to be the four central pillars of Russian Putinite propaganda. The first pillar of Putin's propaganda is doubt about truth itself. Here we get to the heart of how this propaganda works. It wants to convert the thirst each human has for truth into resistance to accepting that anything is true. It exploits your desire not to get duped by politics, to get you to doubt everything about politics, and eventually doubt the very possibility of acquiring truthful beliefs about politics at all. To apply this pillar to a terrible thing Russia does in Ukraine, their defense won't be, this isn't true, we didn't do it, but nobody can really know what's true. The second pillar of Russian propaganda is foregoing of consistency. About a terrible thing in Ukraine, the Kremlin might peddle two incompatible messages. It didn't happen, and it happened, but somebody else did it. The third pillar of Russian propaganda is saturation, volume, flooding. About a terrible thing done in Ukraine, this might mean not taking two, but 8 incompatible positions. It didn't happen, somebody else did it, it was staged, we did it, but we were forced to, Ukraine did it, NATO did it, the planet Saturn did it, the planet Saturn didn't do it, but its rings did. The fourth pillar of Russian propaganda is motivational internality. Think of this as the maxim that a person is only going to be motivated by what already motivates them. Unlike Soviet propaganda, Russian propaganda doesn't want to put into your head something that isn't already there. It wants to start with what already motivates you and then manipulate that. It's not trying to change your ideology. It's helping you spin out of control via your own ideological logic. Interfering in our democracies, the Kremlin's aim is not to take sides in our politics, but to make our political systems ungovernable by exacerbating what already divides us. Ungovernability is the aim. At this point, we need to recognize that Putin's propaganda has changed in a way that affects Russians but doesn't affect us in the West. Since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russian propaganda has moved 20 or 30% back to Soviet-style alternate reality propaganda. The content of this propaganda isn't Soviet. After all, the Soviet Union was a distorted hard-left regime, and Putin's regime is a fascistized hard-right tyranny. But the form is Soviet. It is alternate reality propaganda. 70% of the time, the Kremlin now tells Russians, believe nothing and nobody, not even us. 30% of the time, it now says, do believe us after all, we have an ideology to sell you. This is happening because Russia is a fascistized regime without a fascistized population. The regime knows that this disbalance is unsustainable, but it doesn't know how to change it, when to change it, and whether changing it is something that it can control. To sum up, for us, it's post-truth propaganda. For Russians, it's a combination of post-truth propaganda and alternate reality propaganda.